Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good evening to everyone, and good morning to Helena and viewers in the US. Over there is 8:30 in the morning. Very cold winter morning over there in Washington, right, Helena?
It's very cold. I mean, both the weather and the political climate. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind willingness to talk to us. And before we start, let me introduce you to the viewers first. We have with us Helena Cobban, who is a writer and a researcher on international affairs and who now lives in Washington, D.C. She's originally from UK. In 1984, Cambridge University Press published her seminal study, The Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO. So she's an authority on the PLO, and she knows the late Yasser Arafat personally, who gifted her, what's it called? That gown, the Palestinian traditional gown. 3 of her 6 other sole-authored books dealt with political and strategic developments in the Arab-Israeli theater, and the rest with more global matters. For 17 years, she contributed a regular column on global issues to the Christian Science Monitor and Al-Hayat, a publication based in London. In 2010, she founded Just World Books, which has published groundbreaking titles by Palestinians and also Zionism, Questioning Jewish, and other authors. And in 2016, she was a co-founder of Just World Educational, which now serves as she now serves as the president. Her most recent book, which she co-authored with Rami Khouri, is entitled Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters, published by OR Books in 2024. So without doubt, Helena is the best person, one of the best person for us to talk to in order to understand what is happening in the Middle East. She has studied the Middle East for decades. In other words, she's not only Palestine, but also Syria, Lebanon, etc. And also, since she's based in Washington, she knows also what's happening in Washington. And that's the reason why we are talking to her today, to understand whether the United States will continue to support Israeli crimes in Palestine. But for the benefit of our viewers, Helena, maybe you can start by tracing historically how the U.S. became the main supporter of Israeli crimes, because Britain was the country that was responsible for assisting the settler colonial project or the establishment of Israel, basically in Palestine. But now the US is the primary protector of the project. So can you please explain to our viewers, especially those who may not have the time to research the history of the settler colonial project, how the US came to replace Britain as the most important protector of this illegal state of Israel? Please, Helena.
Gosh, well, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be with you and your viewers there on the other side of the world. I just really love this ability that we have now to, conduct these conversations in real time. And I have very fond memories of my recent visit to Kuala Lumpur. So it's good to be back with you, even if only virtually, because you do such great work there at the Hashim Sani Center. So gosh, you start off with a really hard question, like long history. I'll try and condense it, but yes, you're quite right. Britain, I grew up in Britain and came to the States in 1982. So Britain was the supporter of the Zionist settler colonial project in Palestine, as you said. And then in 1947, right after India and Pakistan had broken free of the British Empire, the British Empire was, in the aftermath of World War II, very, very weak indeed. And it couldn't keep most of the empire. It couldn't keep India and Pakistan. It couldn't keep actually Palestine, where it had had the mandate since the 1923. So it kind of just dumped the Palestine issue into the lap of the infant United Nations and said, you deal with it. So the United Nations crafted this partition plan to partition Palestine quite illegally, but you know that's what they were able to do. And the partition plan was passed only with the support of the United States. And that was because the Zionist movement had lobbied very, very hard here in Washington, D.C. to have the US support the partition plan. Britain did not support it, interestingly. So from that moment, really, the United States was the main protector of the existence of the state of Palestine. Now, there were differences over the years, especially in 1956 with the tripartite aggression against Egypt. But by 1967, which was the height of the US-Soviet Cold War, the Israelis at that point were able to sell themselves to Washington as a strategic ally in what I call West Asia, what you call the Middle East. And that's funny. Yeah. I used to call it the Middle East for a very long time, but okay. I now think of that as a very Eurocentric name because it's only east from Europe. Whereas okay. if you're in Asia, then it's West Asia. But that's okay. You can call it the Middle East. I'm not going to.
All right. Okay.
So yeah, during the Cold War, the Israelis sold themselves as a strategic asset for US imperialism, you know, countering all there were some allies of the Soviet Union, including at various points, the Egypt and Syria and Iraq, never Jordan. Jordan was always a little British protectorate. Mm-hmm. And then obviously it's gone on from there. Right now, it's hard to say whether Israel is of more value to the US or the US is of more value to Israel. I mean, actually, I think, you know, President Trump could pick up the phone tomorrow and say, you know, we are not going to send all those advanced weapons that you want. You have to pull out of Gaza and the West Bank. He could say that, and the Israeli government would have to comply. Okay. If he or another president said that, comply with international law. You know, well, mm-hmm. There's a number of issues there. One is that the US, this administration, no longer believes in international law in any shape or form. And another is, of course, mm-hmm. the influence of the Zionist lobby here. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for a very condensed, very brief history. But the most important points have been raised by you there. And then you mentioned that Trump can just make one announcement, theoretically as President of the United States, which is the main protector of Israel now. If Trump decides that now the US is no longer interested to protect Israel, then that's it as far as Israel is concerned. In terms of its vulnerability and lack of support, it's probably going to go down straight away. But that is theoretically. But what we have been witnessing in last few days, for example, right? They had a meeting, Netanyahu and Trump in Mar-a-Lago, the place, and he came out and said that Trump said that Israel is complying 100% with as regard to the terms of the ceasefire, even though more than 400 Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire was announced, right? And then we will not be surprised if, for example, tomorrow they announce there's news that says that Israel has killed another 10 Palestinians. We will not be surprised. So, but Trump said that Israel has complied 100%. So, now theoretically, Trump can say no, we won't support. But in practice, what we are witnessing is it is as if he is completely impotent, completely helpless. He can't say anything that may be seen to weaken Israeli position, even in the situation of the ceasefire. And he's, from what I can gather, that he said that he is interested to go to the second phase, but Israel is not interested to go to the second phase because they want to maintain their 51% occupation of Gaza, and etc. So what is your reading on what is going to happen to this ceasefire thingy? Because Israel is obviously not interested to withdraw from the 51%, and you need that to take place in order for the ceasefire to proceed. Sorry, for the second phase to proceed. So what we are witnessing now is like a stalemate, and in the meantime, Israel will continue to kill Palestinians. And today, I think there's an announcement that Israel has banned how many NGOs that provide aid to Palestinians, food, etc. They are being banned. They are not allowed. Israel made the announcement. And what's going to happen to Palestinians under the present situation? What is your reading on the situation now, Helena? Yeah, please help us.
Gosh, you know, the situation of the, what is it, 1.52 million Palestinians in Gaza is just beyond like comprehension how cruelly the Israelis have been treating them. And that is not just having, you know, destroyed the physical infrastructure, including, you know, the water and sewage systems and all the housing and the schools and everything else in Gaza, and sending the vast majority of those people into flimsy tarpaulin tents. They're not even allowed to import tent poles or whole tents that would hold up. They just have tarpaulins that they stretch over whatever they can, and then it's winter. It's really cold, it's really rainy, and it's really windy. You know, so the pictures coming out of Gaza are horrendous, but the people are resilient and somehow withstand all of this. So yes, of course, the ban on, what is it? I can't even remember the number, but it's a number of well-respected international NGOs which the Israelis have banned, along with, of course, as we know, UNRWA, the main UN refugee agency for the Palestinians. And the NGOs that have been banned include, you know, well-respected, well, they're all well-respected international NGOs like Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, which have never been banned in any other conflict zone anywhere. So the Israeli attack on Gaza continues, the genocide continues, you know, so it's now at a kind of a lower level of genocide, but actually that just like prolongs and increases the agony and suffering of the families and the children and the people there. So what is the prospect for this so-called ceasefire? It's important to remember that whereas Hamas and the other resistance forces signed on in good faith to phase one of the ceasefire, which included the release of all the Israeli captives and their exchange for large numbers of Palestinian captives, and cease fire. You know, the word has a meaning, and it means you stop your hostilities. The Israelis have not stopped, as you noted. You know, they have killed 400, I think more than 450 at this point, Palestinians, and injured many hundreds more using their military. So, you know, if there were any valid ceasefire monitoring mechanism, these violations would be duly recorded and reported. And, you know, we'd see that from there's this American military mission right there in southern Israel that's supposed to be overseeing the ceasefire. They never tell us who has been violating it. You know, we are reliant on the media And of course, the Israelis don't let the media go in. We're reliant on the Gaza civil authorities, the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Health. And by all accounts, their counting of how many people have been killed is an underestimate. So we really, it's a horrendous situation. As we say in the States, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, I mean, I hate that. Actually, I shouldn't have even said it because it's so dehumanizing to our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza. But it's a very dire situation. So what's going to happen with this ceasefire? So the ceasefire has these two parts. The first 6 points of it is what the resistance in Gaza signed onto and complied with. The only tiny bit of it that they have been unable to comply with is they were supposed to return not only all the live hostages, but the mortal remains of, I think it was 28 deceased hostages, and they could not find the mortal remains of one of the deceased hostages, which is quite understandable if you have seen the pictures of the devastation of Gaza's topography. And if you recall how many Palestinian families are missing their loved ones, they have no idea where their loved ones are. So I think, the resistance in Gaza undertook, huge efforts to find the remains of all the Israeli hostages and found and returned all of them except one. That's the only point on which they did not comply. So the other part of the ceasefire is this big sort of arrangement for what people hope will be post-conflict Gaza, and it involves the establishment of an international body called the Board of Peace and the International Stabilization Force, which will go in and disarm Hamas and the resistance. Now, that second part of the ceasefire, Hamas and the resistance forces have never agreed to. They were never even involved in the negotiations over that. But for some reason, their friends in the governments of Qatar and Turkey and Egypt did agree to that second portion of the ceasefire. And then that was the package that Trump and those three co-mediators took to the United Nations Security Council and got a Security Council resolution adopting the whole thing. To me, that is so shameful. There's almost a straight line from the United Nations in 1947 arbitrarily dividing up the ancient land of Palestine so that the majority of that land would go to the minority of people who were settler colonists in that land. There's an almost straight line from 1947 until November 17th of 2025, when the Security Council just adopted this whole anti-resistance package that Trump had presented. So question is, can the package proceed? Do the Israelis want it to proceed? Are they prepared to withdraw from the remainder of Gaza, from the 53% of Gaza that they still control? I think, honestly, and this is my judgment from afar, that the question of the Israelis' further withdrawal is not the top question. The question is the survival of the Palestinian society that is in the enclosed portion. And, the Hamas and other resistance leaders have said that they are prepared to consider, mothballing some of their weapons, for example, or possibly even handing them over, in the context of a viable Palestinian administration being formed in Gaza. So having that negotiation is the key to the survival of the 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, and nobody here in Washington D.C. wants to have that negotiation. They want, well, when I say nobody, I mean like Trump, okay? There are plenty of people in the United States who support Palestinian rights, and that's important to remember. And that includes now a lot of Jewish Americans, large numbers of Jewish Americans, and Americans who support the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So, you know, potentially there could be the basis for a better foreign policy from the administration. But thus far, well, as we saw on Monday during the meeting that Trump had with Netanyahu on Monday, or rather what Trump and Netanyahu said after the meeting, he's supporting Netanyahu 100% and says if Hamas and the resistance don't immediately disarm, or, you know, very speedily disarm, then, you know, all hell will break loose.
Yeah, okay.
But we've heard that from Trump before, so
So we heard that before. I mean, when he assumed power, that's what he said, right? Before he took over from Joe Biden, he said that all hell will break loose, etc., etc. So people are now quite used to hear that and think that he says one thing, but his actions may be something else. So now you highlighted that the decision of the United Nations Security Council was very shameful, supported by some Muslim countries, right, which you mentioned just now. And then there is Indonesia, which says that they are willing to come in and provide the soldiers for the so-called peacekeeping force, even though Hamas has stated that no, they want the Gaza to be governed by a Palestinian-led faction, not by foreigners. And by Indonesia is trying to butt in for some reason. I don't know why, but other Arab Muslim countries are not interested, but they did support the UNSC. So now what is obvious to me anyway, that as far as the political elites around the world, including Muslim countries, we saw that China and Russia abstained, even though, as you said, the decision, the resolution was very unfair to Palestinians, but Russia and China did not use their veto power. They abstained because they don't want to be more Arab than the Arabs. So the Arab countries decided to support it, a very shameful one, which is like a betrayal of the Palestinian people. So now, my perception is that the Palestinians can't really hope for Muslim countries, Muslim leaders to do anything to help them. So that is why when you mention about the many Americans who are supporting the Palestinian struggle, including Jewish Americans, people like Tucker Carlson, people like Marjorie Green, and some other people now are being very vocal now, not very, very different from maybe 5 years ago. Nobody dared to criticize Israel in public, right, because of the implications. But we can see now students, young people are now becoming very vocal, probably because they realize that their money is being used to fund the genocide in Gaza, and things are getting worse in America. Housing problems and educational problems and health problems, and the American governments are, instead of helping them, are sending money over to help Israelis to kill Palestinian children. So so this thing, the young people are not going to stay quiet. They are going to become more vocal, more angry, because things are going to get worse as well over there in the US. So I am now seeing that perhaps the perception of some Palestinians, because some Palestinians said that after October 7, we can see hope, even though they lost more than half of Gaza, which is now under control by the Israelis, right? They are more than almost 100,000 people or more have been killed, and they are still being as you mentioned just now, they are still suffering. The winter storms have blown away their tents, and there are the flood waters, etc. The people are dying of cold. Despite that, some Palestinians are saying that we can see light at the end of the tunnel, because now the world has seen the real face of the Zionists. But the world has seen the real face of Zionists. Unfortunately, the leaders of the world are not interested to help the Palestinians. Instead, you have the ordinary people all over the world, but the ordinary people of the world don't matter much in this situation. What? Compared to the ordinary people in America. But the ordinary people in America are getting more vocal, and the numbers are getting bigger. And that is what I want to ask from you, since you are based in Washington. Is there really a hope that that things are going to change as far as the American foreign policy is concerned, with regard to West Asia and those and Palestinians in particular? Yeah.
Gosh, I think we have to have hope. Because without hope, you would just like curl up in a ball and cry when you hear what's happening. Not just in Gaza, but also in Sudan and in Congo and so many other places. But of course, for us as Americans, that is, as you noted, our tax dollars and our weapons are actually undertaking this genocide. So that's why we have to be particularly take responsibility for this. So is there a hope that, American society has already changed a lot since October of 2023. The names that you mentioned, Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and many others who are in this particular portion of the American body politic, which is what we call the MAGA base. That's the Make America Great Again movement. That is kind of the grassroots movement of Americans, low-income people from low-income communities in the middle of the country, who feel that economic globalization has left their communities stranded, and that they don't have healthcare, they don't have jobs, they certainly don't have good education. There is a real crisis of underdevelopment in the middle of this country. So those are the people who voted for in large numbers for Donald Trump. That was like 14 months ago, 13 and a half months ago that they voted for him, because the Democratic Party had not served them, was not speaking to them, to their concerns. So that MAGA base it's kind of an interesting socio-political configuration. One of their very strong issues is, let's not get engaged in foreign wars, because so many people from those communities, those low-income communities, were, joined the military and went to Iraq and Afghanistan and came home essentially broken, with drug dependency, suicidalism, a lot of deep injuries, and that affected the communities a lot. So they're saying no more foreign wars, which is why, although we've seen Trump bomb Iran, bomb Syria, bomb Yemen repeatedly, and most recently bomb Venezuela, he doesn't want to put troops on the ground, because his base really doesn't want that to happen. So those people supported him for economic reasons, and the economy has not done well. The economy has done very badly in those communities. And today is December 31st. Tomorrow, January 1st, 2026, the health insurance of, I want to say, probably 100 million Americans, the health insurance cost is going to soar to maybe double what it was. And people know that this increase in costs is coming. They see the increase in costs at the grocery store. And they know that a lot of money goes to Israel. And some people have been on social media recently saying, in Israel, they have free health insurance for everybody. They have free university education for free and good quality university education for everybody. Why should we as Americans be sending money there? So, there's definitely a big new conversation in that kind of, let's say, right-wing base of President Trump. That was a base that during the Cold War would have probably supported every single American foreign war. Now it doesn't. Now it's much more, let's bring the investment home. Let's rebuild our communities. So that's we saw it recently. There was a conference for something called, I think, Turning Point USA.
My computer is problematic. Can you accept my phone running?
Are we? Oh. Sorry, are we still on?
Okay. Sorry. My phone does not have some problems. My computer. So let's continue our conversation. Can you hear me, Helena?
Yes, I can. I can definitely hear you. I can see you in two
Yeah.
two windows here.
Yeah, I know, because I can't see my own self in the computer screen, so I'm using my phone instead. All right, so let me see now.
Well,
okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me
I can hear you. Yeah. That's
okay,
good.
all right. Sorry about that. So now, I quite missed the what you said about the latest development in the US now. But what I want you to explain to us in Malaysia now is to make us understand the dynamics in the US politics, right? So even though the US public are very angry at what's happening over there in Palestine, but the foreign policy has not changed. And I had a conversation with Nader Hashemi from George Washington University. He's director of the Tal Al-Walid Center there. And he said that he doesn't see any prospect of the US foreign policy changing very soon. So what is going to take? What needs to happen in order to ensure that the American foreign policy towards the West Asia will change in the future? That's what I want to get a sense from you, Helena. Can you help us understand that?
Well, yeah, I don't think there are any guarantees, and I agree with what Nader Hashemi said, that it's not going to happen soon. I think where I disagree with what you said is, you said the US public is very angry. No, the US public is not, like, across the board very angry with what's happening in Gaza right now. There are large sections of the public that are angry, but for most people here, they're not interested in foreign policy. They're interested in, the cost of groceries and whether their children will be safe going to school, and whether they can get decent health care in their communities right across the country. So, for them, all foreign policy, but especially something in Gaza that seems to be so, distant and incomprehensible, that's not top of mind. Where they do see, like, a connection, often it's through these, like, pocketbook issues that the money goes to Israel. And that I saw one estimate that $27 billion has been sent since October of 2023. If you took $27 billion, and invested that in good healthcare for the people in the middle of the country, that would be great. But I think what has changed, although most people are not terribly interested or motivated by what's happening in Gaza, what's changed is that at the elite level of elite conversation, it is now more possible to defend Palestinian rights and Palestinian personhood. I mean, I've been in this country for, God, a very long time, let's say 43 years, maybe. Yeah. And I've gone through periods, I mean, most of my time here, I was actively suppressed and excluded from a lot of elite conversations because of my simple proposition that Palestinians are people too, and they are deserving of rights.
Mhm.
Now, it's much more possible for people to say that and to act on that and not to be excluded. And of course, tomorrow we're going to have our new mayor of New York,
Yeah.
Zohran Mamdani, who is a Muslim of Asian and African heritage, born in this country, I think. Anyway, he is a wonderful and very inspiring young man who he's in, like, I think he's 34. I think he's younger than all of my children, ways younger than all of my children. And he managed to win the vote in New York City, which traditionally was the hotbed of Zionist organizing in this country, and still has a lot of especially Jewish community leaders who are very strong supporters of Zionism, but also it's the home of these really intriguing ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities. My friend Miko Peled has done a lot of writing about these people, and these are ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities who always rejected Zionism. And so Zohran Mamdani has been a number of times to go and talk with these people and celebrate Hanukkah with them. And he also has support from important figures in the liberal Jewish community in New York, like the great actor Mandy Patinkin and Mandy Patinkin's wife, who've done some really sweet little videos with Zohran. So the intriguing and new thing is that Zohran got into a lot of trouble for his support for Palestinian rights, and he didn't back down. He stood up for his principles and won the election very overwhelmingly. So that's exciting, and that's something new in the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party in this country has traditionally been the bulwark of pro-Zionist organizing. So things are happening in both these major parties. In the Republican Party, as I referred to a little bit earlier, and also in the Democratic Party. And that's good news, obviously, not to have wall-to-wall Zionists in both parties, but it takes time to work through the system. Democracy is like a very slow system if we, if it even works. So I think people in Malaysia or elsewhere in the Muslim world who are concerned about the situation in Gaza should not rely on the United States coming to solve to end the genocide. I think it's going to take the efforts of everybody around the world, and particularly in Muslim countries. I mean, Turkey or Egypt or Qatar they have a very important role to play as co-mediators of this process. So, potentially, well, Qatar has a very small population. So talking about like popular pressure on the Emir of Qatar is not quite that same model. But, you know, inside the Qatari royal family, I'm sure there are people who are, you know, are saying maybe we could put more pressure on Washington. And they should be able to, you know, given how many wonderful gifts they've given to President Trump and his family, including that big airliner, you know, that they gave essentially to Trump and his family. Like, call it in, say, you know, hey, Mr. Trump, you know, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. In Turkey and Egypt, potentially there is you know, the possibility of public pressure, although it's very difficult in Egypt, which is under very tight American security control. And Turkey is a member of NATO, so, you know, it's not easy, but I think, you know, I would urge everybody around the world to work together for a solution or a path. It wouldn't be a solution, a path that would help to support the Palestinians in Gaza, even if only just where they are. For example, that enclave into which they have been herded, that, you know, 47% of Gaza, it has a huge coastline. If the United Nations should decide to support the people of Gaza, they could send an official United Nations flotilla with reconstruction supplies, with medical supplies, with food, with everything that would be needed, you know? Those are the kind of ideas that I think we need to explore.
Okay, I think, yeah, everybody needs to work harder. We, of course, agree with you totally that we shouldn't be slowing down our efforts to help the Palestinian cause through various means, including the BDS movement, which we are doing over here in Malaysia and many other parts of the world. Without doubt, we need to increase the pressure. But as we also mentioned just now, the United Nations Security Council resolution was an indication that at the end of the day, the Muslim countries are not going to do much to help the Palestinians meaningfully. The Western countries, European countries are not going to do much. Also, Britain decided to jail people who were helping the Palestinian Action Group. In fact, designated it as a terrorist group, and which is, I mean, even the British public are horrified and surprised, right, to see the situation over there in UK, where you are willing to jail old people just because they have a placard that says that they support Palestinian action. So in other, what I'm saying is that it seems that all around the world, people are not able to do much. Of course, we have to do more. We have to continue doing it. But in the US itself, even though you said the American public are not really, they are more concerned about the economy, but that exactly is probably the reason why the situation in the US may change, because when pocket hurts, and then they want to blame somebody, and at the moment they are saying that our money is being sent over to kill children in Gaza. Now you say that things are not going to change very fast. Things move very, very slowly. But I think if we talk about the situation in New York 1 year ago, we probably say that there is no way Zoran Mamdani is going to win that election, right? When I first saw the debate that he had, and he was being questioned by the host, pressuring him to say that he want to go to do you want to go, which is the first country you want to visit after you become New York mayor, something like that, right? And he was an outsider at that time, right? He was somebody who nobody knew about him. But he came out to be the winner, very popular winner. And that is less than, I don't know, I think less than a year. I think the thing changed. So when you say that things are going to go, may change, but it's going to be very slow. But the development over the past few years indicate that things can change very fast, actually, right? What do you think? Helena?
I don't know, honestly. You know, of course, it's wonderful what Zohran Mamdani, mayor to be of New York City, has achieved. And I just put a personal note in here that 2 of my grandkids were out there like canvassing for him and supporting him, even though they're not old enough to vote yet, but they were there. So that's great. But, you know, mayor of New York is a very small position. He's not even like the governor of New York State.
Okay.
So, you know, it takes time to work through the system. We know that in Congress, you know, there are a number of people, like I forget the number of senators, members of the Senate, who supported a bill, you know, to cut back the number of bombs that go to Israel. I think they got the support of maybe 24 out of the 100 senators. So that's good. You know, there is incremental progress in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, and then in the 2 nationwide parties at the grassroots level, and mounting up to the state level, and then the national level. But it still takes a lot of time. And I think what Trump and Netanyahu achieved by getting this so-called ceasefire, which I call sometimes an ease fire, because the Israelis have certainly not ceased their firing, but they've eased up on it a little bit. What they achieved with that is they got the Gaza issue off the front pages of the media and off, you know, the TV news broadcasts, because, you know, now only 5 or 10 Palestinians are getting killed every day, whereas previously it was 100 or 200, you know, so that made the news. Now it's like a lower level of genocide. Let's move on to the next thing, is what people say. So we got to keep working, obviously, and try and use all these networks that we have in this country, but we need international networks too.
So, all right. So I take your point that we in other outside America should not let up, should continue to put pressure and work harder to help the Palestinian cause. Now, we have 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is to ask you, if you don't mind, your latest book here, I have got it here with me, right? Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters. Your latest book, which you co-authored with Rami, right? His name is
Rami Khouri.
Can you briefly explain to us why we need to understand Hamas and why that matters? Can you please?
Yes, happy to, you know, because obviously after October 7th of 2023, there was this massive campaign to demonize Hamas, and Hamas being the Islamic resistance movement in Palestine. And it got to the point where, well, first of all, the first thing anybody would ever, you know, ask in a media interview or whatever was, do you condemn Hamas? And sometimes they say Hamas, you know, which is the way the Israelis pronounce it. Do you condemn Hamas? And like, you had to, at that point, you had to condemn Hamas before you could say anything about, you know, oh, you know, genocide is bad, or like killing children is bad, or whatever. And it was a real sticking point. It was a sticking point in public discussion, but more to the point, it was a sticking point in the UN Security Council, where I think it was 4 of those ceasefire resolutions that went through the Security Council in 2024. And I think the first one was at the end of 2023, and then in 2024 there were a number of them. All those resolutions were vetoed by the US representative in the Security Council on the grounds that the resolution did not condemn Hamas. So, you know, it was being used and was used deliberately as a way to block ceasefire moves by the Security Council. And, you know, people in this country and other English-speaking countries, probably not Malaysia, but you know, in the UK or Australia or Canada or places, they don't know much about Palestinian history in general. So when I brought out my book on the PLO back in 1984, that was kind of groundbreaking, and that busted through taboos at that time about talking about the PLO as a potential, you know, well, recognizing its leadership role at that time in the Palestinian movement. And I took a lot of I received a lot of criticism for, you know, people said, oh, she's supporting the PLO, she's defending the PLO. I was trying to explain, this is where it came from, this is how they make their decisions, these are the debates within the movement, these are the players, the actors, their outside influences, and so on. So in response to the Israelis' launching of their genocide in October of 2023 and this demonization of Hamas, I thought that we need to do something very similar for Hamas, just to explain it. Like, what is its history? Where did it come from? You know, what are how do they make their decisions? How do they reach their decisions? Now, back in, I want to say 2009, 2010, for a number of years around then, I was still a journalist, and I would go and interview all kinds of political actors in Gaza and the West Bank, in the whole region, including in Damascus. And I had two really good interviews, meetings, discussions with leaders from the Hamas movement in Damascus back in the day, including Abu Walid Khalid Mishal and Musa Abu Marzouk and Osama Hamdan, and a lot of them. They would gather, you know, in a kind of collegial way in Damascus. And then when I went to Ghazi, I was able to interview Osama Hamdan, not Osama Hamdan, Ismail Haniyeh and others, and people in the West Bank. So I had that basis, but I haven't worked as a journalist since essentially 2010, when I founded my publishing company. So I looked at who had written good books on Hamas, and Rami, my colleague on the Just World Ed board, Rami and I chose 5 experts on Hamas, and we brought them in and we did a webinar series, which attracted quite a lot of attention. Then we made it into a book, which came out in September of 2024. I mean, we turned this project around really speedily, which is something I like to do with Just World Educational, because we are small and agile. And the book has been selling really well. Rami and I have both done a number of interviews and public events and discussions about the book. Of course, we had pulled it together very speedily, but I think it's still, you know, it stands up really well, because we presented the transcripts of these 5 webinars that we had held, along with some very important basic documentation about the history of the movement. So yeah, if you want to help us to sell copies, that would be good, because you can, you know, whether you're, we made a point of saying we're not for Hamas or against Hamas, but if you want to get a ceasefire, if you want to be able to actually respect the national rights of the Palestinian people, let's see who the important actors, the important players are. And obviously, the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, is one of those.
And there is a comment by John Mearsheimer on the book. He said, truly important, should be read by everyone seriously interested in understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. No less, John Mearsheimer, who's very famous, even among Malaysians here, as a scholar on in the Middle East, and also on the Jewish lobby, right? Okay, Helena, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your thoughts on the issue of Palestine as well as West Asia, and also your reading of the situation over there in the US. I was hoping to get a more optimistic picture, but you are giving a more realistic picture of the situation in the US over there in terms of ending the support for Israel. But anyway, I think your comment that people all over the world must continue to work harder together to contribute to the Palestinian cause, I think that is very important for us to realize and also to echo and to spread around to make sure nobody slows down, because situation over there in Gaza and the West Bank also, right, is very dire. People are being killed there, and Israel is really serious now, trying to evict them from their country, right? The Somaliland issue, apparently they're trying to force Palestinians to go there to as part of their plan to of ethnic cleansing, apparently, right? So, but inshallah, with what we support from people like you and clarifying to us and making us understand the issue further, hopefully there will be more support for the Palestinian cause among the ordinary people all over the world. So, Helena, hopefully we can have more conversation in the future. Thank you very much again for your kind willingness to speak to us early morning over there in Washington, and hopefully we can have another webinar again in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye, Helena. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and thank you for having me. It's always good to talk to you, Prof.